I'm speaking 12 per, each person's got to make a marijuana card. You could have 12 plants. That's it.
My number would be 6.
Yeah. What if more than one card holder live in a home?
I would say, and that's like with the 12, a maximum of 12 per resident.
Okay.
And so Larry's 6 per person, you got 2 guys, you have 12, but a maximum of 12. We really want 20 people living in the house and have,
Yeah,
My answer was, I'm assuming to the card holders,
Yeah,
2 plants per person, 2 people, there could be 6 people in the house and all 6 of them have cards, but you can only have 2 cards. That's what I'm saying.
4 plants max?
Yes. Because we had testimony today saying, we can get a turnover of 3 to 4.
Right.
Okay. So you got a pulse on that. Okay.
Yep.
So, number 4, shall there be a limitation on number of patients in collective serves?
Yes.
Yes.
How many?
And I think that's how you get to the problem.
Could be 2. That's the critical question now.
I would say 2.
The other side of that is no matter the number of patients that a collective serves, what's the maximum number of plants per parcel?
There you go.
And that is an alternative way of dealing with that.
Yeah.
It's to 12.
12. I would agree with 12. Yeah.
Okay.
2.
Okay.
Do you agree with 12?
12.
Okay. Will any amendment to ordinance 575 regulating cultivation be applicable countywide or only in specific zones? Tom? My answer would be countywide.
It would have to be.
I'm definitely countywide.
Yeah.
I'm definitely countywide.
Tom?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. Number 6, shall all grow locations be required to apply for and receive a conditional use permit prior to being approved?
Before we take input on this, may I provide some backdrop as to why I included that? I appreciate the prospect of having a regulatory scheme in place as it relates to the cultivation of marijuana, so that if it's to occur indoors for the reasons I stated previously, the electrical stuff, or if it's going to be grown on someone's parcel outdoors, that it's not too close to the neighbors. So essentially that Maury and company can do a monitoring, really, if you will. The other side of that is I get somewhat concerned that if we create a list, if you will, for regulation, well, number one, we just created a list, that government has a list of people that are growing marijuana. There's that argument, and so is that something we want to do? Do we want to have a list of people, essentially, that are doing that? And, there's budgetary concerns associated. I've mentioned that before. If we create a regulatory scheme where there is a conditional use permit process, that's going to involve, and Maury can talk to this stuff, staff time, monitoring time, plan review, all of that stuff.
Anything you have to get a permit for, you got
No doubt.
list of those people for that particular.
All I'm saying is this is adding to the pile.
Okay, but what makes that a relevant question is the amount of plants per parcel.
All right. So we'll start off with taking those points
Thank you, sir.
and I'll begin. I would say, I would say yes, they need a permit. Reason being, we need to know who's doing it, and there needs to be a strict penalty if you do it without a permit. There's a huge fine prohibited. Then we know. Otherwise, it's uncontrollable. We need to know if there's 48 people doing it. We need to know, or if it's 148. But without that, we won't know. So that's my answer, Tom.
I say no because we don't have the sheriffs here and we don't have the DA here. And who's going to enforce that?
Well, that's an important
Are
question.
you going to throw that on Maury's shoulders?
I'm not going to throw it on anybody's shoulders. You're the ones working on it.
Am I going to throw that on Maury's shoulders?
I'm just a writer.
Bob, what would you say?
I say yes, and the law enforcement can get involved,
Okay.
My biggest concern is that we craft something that just doesn't even get the time of day. That we craft something and it has
Right.
penalty
It's
provisions in there,
unenforceable.
and not that it's not enforceable. but that there's choices made, that we've got other things that we're doing.
Yeah.
And so that's a concern.
And that's why the sheriff
If you
should be
can,
here.
okay.
And I don't know, maybe some
You get involved before we get.
of the members of the public can address it, but I'm not sure growers use chemicals like we do in agriculture, those that have to be registered with the Ag Commissioner or not, fertilizers, pesticides, and that sort of thing. But that may be an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Aaron, would you use permit?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. As much as I don't want everybody to give 10 minutes of debate on each topic, I just want to say that, I mean, I say if you can't even enforce having a permit to who grows it, I mean, what's the use of even having an ordinance? Just let everybody go wild. Because if we're going to allow it, and we say, oh, okay, we're going to allow it, we want it to be limited, but don't make them get a permit, we don't care who's doing it. That to me just goes against the whole reasoning for trying to craft an ordinance if you don't even know who's going to be licensed to do it. But, all right. Anyone else want to chime in on that? I don't want to. Okay, number 7. Shall there be any fees associated with any application process? Aaron?
Yes.
I say yes.
I say yes.
What enforcement mechanism shall be employed to see ordinance 575 as amended is adhered to? So I would say criminal.
My recommendation, and again, this is going to be kind of the second component. First component would be, how much, where, by whom, and when. The second component would be, okay, if you're blowing the first component off, what's going to happen to you? And I favor, and as your attorney, I would recommend that you build in as many options as possible, that you have a kind of a set of choices. And that could be administrative and criminal, both.
Well, part of this question here probably tie into number 9, which is
yes.
anybody involved.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Exactly, but we can't have it on the agenda and do nothing because they're not here.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd like you to compile this feedback and then,
Yes, sir.
Richard, with the sheriff and,
Yes.
they need to know where we stand too. Yeah. So, did everybody answer that number 8? Okay. Okay.
And maybe both.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is I receive, when I hear the supervisor say criminal, what I'm assuming the response there, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, no question there's administrative penalties associated with not complying with the use permit.
Yes.
But what you're saying is that you would favor also the prospect of it potentially being dealt with criminally too.
If he has a use permit to grow, if he came up with a number like, 12 per parcel, and it's found that he has, 30 plants, it needs to be criminal.
Could be.
Yeah,
Could
not just to get $100 fine.
Correct. Could be both.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think both.
I think this at least gives you an opportunity to know.
I've got a little bit more framework.
And then I think maybe my suggestion would be to, based on the consensus of that, put something together, and then maybe also as an add-on, go through Mr. Hodges' deals
Yes.
and say, how does the board feel about some of these?
So, are we going to answer number 9?
Oh, yeah, obviously, yeah. Not number 9, I would say, of course, the sheriff needs to.
I'd like to, could I start? Jim?
Sure.
I'd like to say yes on that, but I'd like to throw Maury in this because it sounds like, I'd like to hear his input on that.
I don't think you're going to be able to have a hearing on the possible adoption of Ordinance 575 without him attending.
Yeah.
We're not going to be able to schedule that, regardless of invitation. He's going to be here for that because he is interested in that, because he knows, because we've spoken about it, that it directly, of any of the departments, impacts his department more than any.
Yeah, I'm glad I was asked to speak on this subject. Finally. I'm resistant to be the marijuana police, number one. And I understand and I appreciate, I think Bob's done an excellent job summarizing the situation and seeking direction. And that's what we're trying to get here. And we're not looking to decisions today. We're just trying to focus the process. And I think it's really important, Bob said it, and I'll just keep repeating a lot of things he said, that if we create a regulatory scheme, there are impacts, from FTEs in my department to unknowns, which people talk about. We don't know, but we don't know yet about how that's going to work. And when we talk about enforcement, I'm not a peace officer. My code enforcement officers, not that, doesn't play that role either. And so, what's missing to me at these early stages is just what Mr. Burge pointed out. We don't have input from the DA and from the SO's office. And I think those are two critical components that, whether you like it or not, are going to help shape where we go and how we do things. So that said, I want to back up a few things. We talked about, and I don't know if you went through your list and if screen from ordinary view or something like that of that nature was mentioned, but if that were to be the case, it impacts things such as setbacks, because you can't build a fence surrounding plants in a setback. And so there's all these little intricacies that matter about these choices we're making. So I guess my general thing is, this is just a broad discussion to come back and have further discussions. We're not making sweeping decisions today, I understand that, but there's all these little nuances that seem like, well, we need a permit. Well, is it an administrative permit that you meet all the standards, somebody upstairs gives you the permit, which we do on certain things, or is it a use permit where we notify 300 feet around the property and come before the planning commission and consider CEQA or not CEQA, and all those different things, which from a fiscal standpoint really make a big difference. So there's just a lot of little things. I think this is right where we're supposed to be, but when we come back, we're going to try to pick at these questions a little more thoroughly than just these broad strokes that we're making today.
Yeah, agreed. We need to start somewhere.
I agree.
Yeah.
I see this, like I said before, in two components. One is a component which proposes thoughtful, kind of enduring limitations on how much can be grown, where it can be grown, and basically. That's one component. But the second component being, okay, so what are we going to do about it if we find, whether by complaint or self-monitoring, some form of violation? And those I see are two separate things.
And I think if it doesn't have, teeth involved in the penalty, it's going to be useless. And I think also if we don't discuss and move this forward, as a part of every agenda,
Yes, sir.
it could take, a year.
Oh, it could take a while.
Yeah. So, and I think we owe it to the people that are living next door to these 99 plant grows, whether kids are too afraid to go outside, ride their bicycle anymore.
I agree.
We really need to address this at each meeting and move forward and try and get something done in a few months rather than, a year and a half. I mean, it's unbelievable to think how people's lives have been negatively affected because this is allowed to happen. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine any of us living next door to that nightmare with young kids that are afraid to go outside, and it's just not right. So I know we're suffering the consequences of state law and what have you, but we also, like you said, through zoning, we have the ability to fix it. We need to fast track that fix.
And I'm hearing you, Mr. Chairman, loud and clear. I want to temper that just a touch by asking for the ability to be certain that while we do observe your request to fast track, we also be thoughtful and deliberate in our choices.
One other issue that we've discussed a little bit, but I don't think formally with the board, is the issue of the city versus the county. Of course, the city's going through the same discussion that we're having now. I think it would be advisable, to the extent that we can, to make our ordinances consistent and similar in terms of plant count and so on, because we may create an environment where it's easier or more difficult to grow in the county versus the city, and what impacts does that have? Encouraging or discouraging where these things go. And so maybe,
And I agree with Mr. Egan on that issue, and I've had some pretty lengthy discussions already with the Chief of Police, Tom Downing, on this particular issue for the city of Susanville. And I think it serves the constituency. I think it serves uniformity of government, the purpose of having something as close to each other as possible. At the same time, we're going to reach a point, if we can't get them to be the same or close, that we're just going to be delaying and not observing this need to address an issue in the county. There may be, in the end, some difference. It's the essence of it. Each entity has its own authority to police it in the manner in which it chooses. Generally.
You know, at the end of the day, too, if it just proves to be, for whatever reason, you know, that old saying, when you get too many, you know, cookies to swallow. And if it goes on and on, there's just too many things dealing with the police, the sheriff, the city, trying to coordinate it, and meeting after meeting, and nothing's going on. I mean, there is the option just to ban it. And if we can't, as a board, and the elected, I mean, first and foremost, our responsibility is with the people that live here. They lived here before this law came into effect. And if we don't have the, you know, the wherewithal or the whatever you want to phrase it as, is to protect those people that were enjoying their life and property here before this became legal, then we need to protect it by the simple way. That's ban it. And we don't want to do that because we have empathy for the legitimate people that do need it. But at the same time, you know, my loyalty would be first and foremost with the people that were enjoying their property before all this mess came to town. So hopefully we can come up with a solution that fixes it for everybody.
Just one more question. I have rentals, and will there be something in this ordinance that would outlaw them to grow that in my rental houses?
One of the common, I don't want to say common, but it's certainly been employed in other jurisdictions that have passed a zoning ordinance since the city of Live Oak case came out, is to ask, when you have a situation where you've got a tenant living on a property, on a parcel, and they're growing marijuana, to require that there be some sort of written statement of approval granted by the landlord, the owner of the property. And what that does is, number one, because a lot of times, you know, you've got absent landholders, basically, people that don't know that are tenants growing weed on their property. And secondly, it also gives them knowledge of the activity on the parcel for later prospective enforcement purposes. They can't say they didn't know.
Okay, so it'll be in my policies.
That's also in Mr. Hodges' comments that are going to be brought to it in the law. Yeah. In the next go-around, we're going to have some of that incorporated for discussion. Yeah. Okay, well, I think we've covered, you know, unless anybody has anything else to add, we'll move on.
Does that give you some good?
I think it certainly narrows it for me, and I needed that, and that's why I asked that it be agenda. I'm not particularly fond of. I feel compelled to say that I feel like I'm going to be bumping up against bumpers from time to time, and please, if I do that, I mean, I'm doing the best I can in trying to formulate something that I think recognizes what was heard at the study session, what you all have announced. There's going to be issues that I can't predict yet, and I'm going to do the best I can on that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, all righty, we'll move on to H3. Thanks,
Mr.
Melody.
Chairman, board
Oh,
members.
thank you.
What you have before you is a contract, the new contract for us. We have a need with the change in the types of prisoners, the types of inmates we're getting at the jail now. We have misdemeanors who are being declared incompetent to assist themselves in a trial. And when they are misdemeanors and not felons, they become the responsibility of the county mental health department to find a place to put them so they can be restored to competency and come back and go to trial. We have never had a contract like this before. This is a new organization we're contracting with. Their specialty is restoring competency. We had a young man in the jail who is in dire need of placement, and so we asked to have this contract go through on an emergency basis. And Richard did sign it. He was going to ask you to approve the contract, and approve Richard having already signed it so we could get this young man placed.
Any comments or questions? Question. Melody, on page 5 of this, they're talking about the temporary absences, and you're still going to pay for them if they're absent. I mean, what?
Well, if they have to come, if it's to hold the bid. So if they, gosh, right off the top of my head, let's say he fell and broke his ankle and needs to go to the hospital overnight, we'd still pay for the bed that night. If he, for some reason, had to come to court, and you brought him up here to spend the night to go to court and then take him back, we would still pay for the bed for the time that he was gone, because we want to keep that bed for him. That's pretty standard in our contracts.
And what rate? I mean, you got the two different. It depends on what kind of bed he's in, whether it would be the higher or the lower.
Yes, and
would it be the daily rate or the hourly rate, or how does that work?
well, there are. I have that rate chart right here.
On page 6 is one.
Thank you. So he is going to be in the.
Let's speak in terms of generically, if we could. Thank you. Don't want to reference any particular individuals.
So it depends on what they're there for. This person is going. A person who's going for restoration of competency. It depends on how sick they are. They'll determine which unit they need to go into and what the grade is. The monitoring is the one. The $30 per hour would be in addition to the daily rate. And ideally, with someone who's really, really sick, being in a place like that where they have the experience and the expertise, and they would be monitoring them, and eventually that need for that highest level of placement would begin to taper off, and they would be placed into a lower level of placement with less or no monitoring. So, ideally. Questions?
Before we take action, there's no questions.
I have no
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
I move to call.
Okay. The action request is approved by the administrative officer.
Could I make a comment real quick, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
I want to say that as the former district attorney, it was always a point of frustration in previous administrations with health and social services that we had difficulty with misdemeanants who were essentially bordering between criminal behavior and just sick folks, and they needed facilities to be able to go to, but we struggled with some of the previous administrations to be able to get those kinds of alternative placements. Folks that shouldn't be sitting in the jail, but that should be getting some help, really. And I guess what I'm saying is that with Ms. Brawley, this is the first time that I've seen that entity willing to go there. And it's, in my view, very responsible. So,
But expensive.
it is expensive, and the numbers of facilities that are available as an alternative to the state hospital are almost non-existent,
Yeah.
and it's a difficult thing at best. But I guess I just wanted to say thank you, because there's a group of folks out there that live amongst us that commit what are perceived at times as crimes, but really are generated as a result of some long-term mental facility or impairment, and they don't necessarily need to be dealt with by the criminal justice system. They need to be dealt with in terms of long-term treatment, and I just appreciate that we're looking at that, because the alternative previously was cut them loose. They don't belong in jail. Let them go, and they go untreated, and that's, and then it just happens again. Some period of time later.
And again.
Yes, it does. And it's not fair to the victims, future victims. It's not. And so,
It's not fair to them.
it's not.
Thanks, Paul,
Thank
for
you.
bringing that up.
No,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Melody. All righty. We'll take up I correspondence. Was this the Marine Corps League? Was that under I? No.
I don't think we had it.
No. This is in the packet.
No, there were no I items.
Did everybody see this? Maybe it might have fell out of the packet.
No, I saw it.
Was that in the pass around perhaps?
Yeah, well, no, it wasn't a pass round, it was in our box.
Oh.
Don McMullen.
Okay, separate, yeah, it was not.
All right. So,
Still have follow-up closed session here.
So we're going to go back into closed session.
I hope you get them.